Hey guys, welcome to the Explanation Pro. In this video, I am gonna talk about the 2017 history romance film, In Harm's Way. As usual, there will be spoilers ahead, so take them with a grain of salt and let's get started. The movie starts with a soldier named Jack Turner coming into an office, and his left leg is crippled, so he can't walk properly. There are two senior high-ranking officials in that room, and they ask Jack how he was able to get out of China and what exactly happened to him. Jack's story starts in a B-25 mission. Americans will attack Japan, and then they will partner with the Chinese government against the Japanese. Jack is the airplane pilot alongside his other four crew. They take off from the ship and start to fly across Tokyo. On the other side, in the province of China, a young lady is wandering around the forest and doing household chores. Her primary work is silking. She has a daughter named Nunu, and her name is Ying. She's a widow working for her daughter. Back in the airplane, Jack and his crew reach Tokyo and start bombing everywhere, specifically warehouses and plantations. However, Ying sells her homemade silk to a barterer in return for cash. She always asks for cash because she's saving money for her daughter. She picks up Nunu in school after she sells her products. As they walk home, the head of the village, Kai, approaches them and asks how they are. Kai is a concern to Ying because since her husband died in a war, her in-laws ask them to live with them, but Ying always refuses. When they get home, Nunu looks frustrated, and Ying asks her. She starts crying when Ying finds out that she's been mocked at school because it's bad luck for them to be a widow's daughter. She comforts her daughter. At night, she opens the trapdoor hidden under the table, puts all of her money in a jar, and she preys on her husband as she goes up. On the same night, two Chinese soldiers are watching in a tower, waiting for Americans to come. When Jack's plane is approaching the runway, Chinese officials mistakenly think that the Japanese are attacking them because Americans are not supposed to come early, so they turn off the runway lights. Jack gets pissed. They can't see anything, so they move to their plan B, which is to jump out of the plane using their parachutes. So he advises his men to jump, and he's the last one. After the jump, the plane crashes in the middle of the mountain. The crash is heard in Ying's house since they're nearby. She sees the fire and turns off every light in her house to fear the Japanese attacking them. The following day, when Nunu is walking in the forest, she notices blood, and she looks up, seeing Jack hanging from a tree, unconscious. Nunu runs to their house, and she tells her mom what she sees. Ying doesn't believe it at first, but when she goes to see for herself, it's true. They immediately go to Kai, who's eating lunch with his family. The three see Jack, and they decide to put him in a nearby cave. They pick up Jack and start to carry him to the cave. After putting him off, Kai strictly advises them not to tell anyone. Henceforth, the two Chinese soldiers talk again, and the other says they made a mistake last night because it was the Americans who came, not the Japanese. On the other side, the Japanese soldiers go after where the plane crashed. They didn't see anyone in the plane, so they went to the village and put everyone in a plaza, kneeling and interrogating them about where the soldiers were. All of them are scared and do not say anything, so the captain gets pissed more. He asks where the village's head is, so Kai goes. Kai kneels, and the captain is still asking the villagers. No one talks, so the captain shoots Kai in the head, and he dies. He commands his men to search every house. After the interrogation, Ying gets home with Nunu, and they find their house a mess. She runs first to the trapdoor, and luckily the money is still there. Ying goes to the barterer, and she asks questions about the bombing in Tokyo. He says that it's true, that's why the Japanese are mad with the Americans. Also, the Japanese soldiers set up their tents in the village. Jack wakes up in the cave with the coldness and hunger he feels. The next morning, Ying brings him food, and he points his gun at Ying, thinking she might be an enemy. Ying runs out of fear, but Jack wants to chase her, but he can't because of his leg. Jack eats the food instead. There's a funeral for Kai. Ying and Nunu go to the village, and they start commemorating his memory. Nunu is about to tell Jack, and Ying grabs her hand, and they go. Ying goes back to the cave to bring Jack food again, but she runs when Jack is about to ask her for help. She's scared of him, and she can't understand him. While Ying is washing leaves in a nearby creek, she hears the Japanese finding out the parachute hanging from the tree where Jack fell. Ying stands up and goes to Jack and explains to him that the Japanese are coming after him, so she helps Jack walk and brings him into their house, at the trapdoor underneath. When Nunu comes home after school, she complains to her mom about why Jack is there. They might get killed. But Ying says that he is a pity and he might die. Ying takes care of Jack. She makes food for him and checks on him from time to time since he has a high fever. The next morning, Ying goes to the market to buy herbal medicine. and when she gets home, she treats Jack's leg wounds and takes care of him. At Nunu's school, Captain Shimamoto goes inside without further notice. Jun stops teaching and the students stand. But the captain asks them to sit down as he shows a handmade bag from Ying. He explains that they found it in the cave. The captain asks the teacher if he recognizes the bag. He says he doesn't, so he makes it look to all the students. The captain locks his eyes on Nunu's reaction when she looks at the bag. Ying picks up Nunu from school, and Nunu says what happened to her day when the Japanese soldier came to their classroom. As they walk home, Captain Shimamoto sees them. After a few minutes, the captain goes to Ying's house, holding the bag he's carrying. He goes inside and inspects the house, looking for someone. Both Ying and Nunu are terrified and can't look straight into the captain's eyes. Underneath, Jack is awake, and he's holding his gun in case anything happens. When the captain is about to go, Jack accidentally moves a teapot, and it makes a sound. The captain hears it from above and thinks that there's someone. After that, the captain goes outside the house. On the same night, Jack knocks from below, and Ying checks outside first to see if there are Japanese before she opens the trapdoor. Jack goes outside, and she gives her water. Jack stays and sits down with Nunu as Ying is finishing their meal. They all eat together for dinner, and after that, Jack grabs a paper and pencil from Nunu and draws 5 men and the parachute. He tries to explain to Ying that he needs to find his other 4 crew. Because of the language, they can't understand each other, which frustrates Jack. Nunu is complaining to her mom because she's not comfortable in Jack's presence. Ying, just let her sleep. As the accumulated raindrops from Ying's roof, she gives Jack a couple of clothes and tells her to wash his face using that water. After it, Ying goes to their bedroom, and she's looking at Jack in the living room, cleaning himself. The next morning, Ying is washing Jack's clothes in the creek, and she advises Jack to go back to the trapdoor, so he follows. Ying goes to the barterer again and asks about the updates of the remaining 4 men. He says that they are executed. Ying is walking when Jun interrupts her. He asks if he knows the bag is Ying's, but she denies it. She continues walking. Jack goes outside the trapdoor again. Ying catches Jack fixing the roof. She panics and pulls his feet down. She's furious at him. Jack explains that he can't breathe underneath, so he goes outside. Ying goes to the village again and asks the barterer to give her duck and rice, which surprises him. She goes to her in-laws' house, gives them money, and is thankful to her. They talk about Ying. They think Kai and Ying have a relationship, and she doesn't honor her late husband's memory. Ying starts to cry and defends herself. She just left and went home. When Ying gets home, she starts to cook the duck. She goes outside for a minute to look for bamboo. Jack is teaching Nunu to whistle Yankee Doodle at the house because he sees how frustrated she is. When Ying comes back, she makes a crutch for Jack out of the bamboo she gets from the forest. Jack is really happy and thankful to Ying. They eat dinner all together again. After dinner, Ying is washing all the utensils, and she looks at Jack practicing his crutch. Before they go to sleep, Ying treats Jack's leg again, and they hold each other's hand. The following day, Ying silks again when the captain knocks at their door. She tells Jack to go under the trapdoor, and he follows. It takes a while for Ying to open the door, which frustrates the captain. He goes inside her house again and asks for tea. They both sit, and he tells Ying to entertain him. He wants to devour his hungry flesh to Ying, but she rejects it and starts to cry. Underground, Jack is watching them, and he starts to point out his gun to the captain. And since the captain gets mad, he forces himself to Ying and puts her on the ground. He tries to undress her. Ying is screaming for help. Jack pulls the captain's head trigger, leading to his death. Jack goes above again and comforts Ying. They put captain's body at the trapdoor. At school, Jun hears Nunu whistling Yankee Doodle. He goes to her and asks where she learned it, but Nunu refuses to answer. When Ying picks up Nunu, Jun confronts her that he knows she's hiding the American soldier, but she denies it. When they get home, Jun follows them, and he forces himself to get inside, but Ying isn't able to stop him. Jun shouts and speaks English. That's when Jack comes out, and he points his gun at Jun. Jun explains that he's alongside the guerrillas, and they are friends. He's willing to help him. Jack doubts at first, but Jun knows how to get Jack out of there and get him to Chungking. Before he leaves the house, Jun tells them to get ready because they will escape that night. When Jun leaves, they all prepare for their things, and Ying gets her money. Jun goes back to the school and tells his students to go home early. While waiting for Jun, Ying cuts her hair and gives it to Jack on the same night. The Japanese soldiers are now looking for the captain, and they search again from house to house. Ying tells Nunu to look outside if there is someone. When Nunu is away, Ying and Jack kiss each other and hug. They start to walk in the forest. The Japanese find out the dead body of Captain Shimamoto, and they burn Ying's house. From afar, she looks at it with tears in her eyes. They meet with Jun and the gorillas on the other end, and Jack rides in a handmade bamboo that he can sit on. They walked as fast as they could. An airplane is now attacking the gorillas and Jack, trying to shoot them down. Jack is able to kill the pilot, and the plane crashes again, which gives the Japanese the attention to where to find. After minutes of walking, and with the help of Japanese's dogs, they catch up with the gorillas, and they are now shooting each other. They prioritize Jack, Ying, and Nunu to get out of that shooting. The gorillas are dying one by one. Jun is the only one left alive, and he grabs his grenade and throws it at the Japanese. When they are near the riverside, where the boat is waiting, Jun picks up Nunu first, and they help Jack walk. Ying is the last one, and a Japanese soldier sees her, and he shoots her in the heart. Ying dies, and Jack tries to save her, but she can't fight for her life. With all the heaviness in his heart, Jack needs to leave Ying's body as they go through the boat. After that, Jack narrates what happens. After that, they go to a town where he can't remember the name. The Chinese Nationalist Army tries to separate him and Nunu, but it's unsuccessful. That's what also happens in Chungking. That's why Nunu is with him at the hospital. Jack looks for his crew, and the two senior officials say they are still missing. When Jack goes back to the ward, the lieutenant gives him an appreciation and talks to him. He explains that he can't adopt Nunu, but there is a Chinese couple who is willing to adopt her. Jack says he can't just leave her, but the lieutenant explains that there is still war. He needs to do his duty first. Nunu goes to him, and they say goodbye to each other, and they both cry. Before the lieutenant leaves, he says to Jack that the media press is outside waiting for him. The movie ends with Jack writing a letter to Nunu 50 years later. He explains that he never forgets her mother or her within those years. Every day, he's thinking about them. Jack fixes his uniform. He walks down the hospital aisle and opens the door where the media is waiting for him. That's all for today's video, and thanks for watching it. If you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Also, let me know in the comments below which movie you want me to cover in the next video. Until next time, take care and stay tuned.